Dave Aranda has done a phenomenal job of getting Baylor back to where it needs to be and in getting himself off the hot seat in the process. And this is a Baylor Bears team and a fan base that expects big things in 2025. We take a deep dive into the Baylor Bears to see what should we expect from this team this year. And Baylor goes 8-5 last year. Dave Aranda deserves a lot of credit for that. His ability to make coaching staff changes, to make transfer portal changes, and bring in the right players along with the recruiting that he's done. He did a phenomenal job of putting together the right team, and there was a lot of momentum for them heading into the offseason. And Jake Spavital is a great play caller, and Sawyer Robinson is going to do a lot of good things under him while he's still at Baylor. And this is an offense that should be one of the best in the Big 12. Now, Dave Aranda is going to have his hands on the defense, but Matt Powledge is going to contribute to that as well. And if there's a group that needs to improve, it's definitely that group. That's plain and simple. The defense will need to be better, but they did bring in some transfer portal talent that could help in that regard. And they also bring back plenty of exciting players and some with tremendous potential that are taking over larger roles for this defense. The changes they make, you don't lose a ton of talent, honestly, where you're necessarily concerned about certain positions. Now, losing a guy like Matt Jones leaves a big hole in the defense. Matt Jones was a tackling machine. You feel like he is going to be one of the biggest losses on this roster. I'm really bummed that we didn't get to see more of DeQuan Finn, but without his injuries and whatnot, you don't get Sawyer Robertson. So maybe that was a silver lining for that. But overall, I don't think that they feel they lost a ton of talent that they necessarily need to worry about replacing. Now, you obviously have NFL talent that departs, but overall, I think that you have a number of players that left that you brought in players maybe that you feel better about. You bring in Walker White to be a potential backup for Sawyer Robertson. We'll see, he'll compete for that spot, but he's a guy that has potential. I know Auburn was excited about him when they got him, but things didn't work out. We'll see if that's different with Baylor. You also bring in plenty of secondary players that will contribute right away and provide a lot of good depth. So that'll be interesting as well. Two new wide receivers to pay attention to, Kobe Prentice and Cole Wilson. We'll talk about Cole Wilson's relationship with this team here in a little bit, but this is going to be a really interesting roster to pay attention to, an interesting depth chart, and we'll just dive right into it. This is an offense that has the potential to be one of the best in college football, not even just one of the best in the Big 12. Everything starts with Sawyer Robertson. Sawyer Robertson is getting a ton of hype going into the offseason, and for good reason. You look what he did last year, over 3,000 yards, 28 touchdowns. There are a lot of people that are really high on him already, and I think that the bandwagon is only growing by the day, by the minute, by the second. 6'4", 220 pounds. A lot of people are looking at his future in the NFL. You're already looking at guys that he could potentially replace on certain rosters. And now he's got a lot of hype to live up to. And we'll see if he can handle that pressure, though he did pretty well last year. I think that there were a lot of teams that gave him a lot of trouble, but he figured out how to be competitive and how to win. You look at the bowl game against LSU, I think that you saw what could be for this team in 2025. And this offense, the passing attack, is going to be really fun with two of the players they return here that we'll talk about in a little bit, as well as the transfer portal talent. I think they did an incredible job of bringing in quality talent to back up some of the wide receivers they have. Now, behind Sawyer Robertson, we talked about Walker White. Walker White is going to be interesting in this offense. Now, he's going to be battling for the backup position, maybe with Nate Bennett. We'll see. But Walker White has the talent to be a really fun player. He just didn't obviously work out at Auburn. But watching Robertson, seeing what he does, learning from him could be potentially beneficial to Walker White to potentially lead this offense when Sawyer Robertson ultimately goes to the NFL. Now, while everyone's really excited about Sawyer Robertson and his passing attack, and for good reason, the rushing attack has a two-headed monster that does not get talked about enough. Bryson Washington had over 1,000 yards last year with 12 touchdowns. Dawson Pendergrass, 671 yards and 6 touchdowns. And one thing that you'll note with some of these players on both offense and defense is the size. I think Dave Aranda has a certain type that he likes with certain positions, and he likes to err on the side of a bigger frame to utilize. Now, Bryson Washington is 6 feet, 203 pounds, but Pendergrass is 6'2, 218 pounds. That is a good sized backfield that is going to be able to handle a lot of physicality, a lot of potential hits that they're going to see. And having both of them back, honestly, in the era of the transfer portal, pretty impressive. I'm surprised that one of them did not try to go somewhere else. And obviously, that maybe speaks to what Baylor did in terms of their efforts to keep them around, whether that's financially, whatever works in this new NIL era. It speaks to what this group did, and also speaks to what these two believe in this offense. This is an offense that has plenty of talent, and they are going to try to make a run at the college football playoff. Joseph Hagman had a few carries last year. Caden Knighton is a freshman to keep an eye on. But the rushing attack feels like it's in good hands with those two. You just maybe want to identify that third or fourth option behind those two guys. The passing attack we already mentioned. This is a group that has a ton of potential to be one of the best in college football this year. And honestly, when you look at this, Josh Cameron is an absolute stud. 754 yards and 10 touchdowns. Only knock on him is probably that he wears the number 34, which looks absolutely ridiculous. A great frame, though, at 6'1", 218 pounds. I mean, if you go look at him, this man is built. He is so strong, and he's got just so much strength to be able to play through contact, to be able to make tough catches. He is someone that's going to be Sawyer Robertson's favorite target once again. You also see Ashton Hawkins come back a little bit on the smaller side at 5'10", 165 pounds. The former Texas State transfer had a solid year for the Bears. I think that this was one of those guys that you weren't sure what you were going to get, and he delivered. 45 catches, 567 yards, and 5 touchdowns in 2024. Alabama transfer Kobe Prentice is looking to take a step in the right direction for his career. He is someone that could benefit from having a guy like Josh Cameron, having an experienced player like Ashton Hawkins in this offense. You also have a guy behind him in Lewis Brown IV. He is someone that if you're looking for a guy that could potentially break out in this offense, he is one. Same with Cole Wilson. Cole Wilson and Ashton Hawkins were teammates at Texas State, so they come into an offense that they're very familiar with, and they should have a really exciting time. But Lewis Brown IV was a nice addition. Transferred from Colorado State to San Diego State, and decided that he doesn't want to stay there, so he goes back into the portal, ends up at Baylor, and Baylor adds him in a heartbeat. That gives them plenty of depth, plenty of potential talent to start. Again, I think that Cameron and Hawkins are solidified in their roles. The other wide receiver position is relatively up for grabs. Cole Wilson could be that guy, Lewis Brown. Tyler Kirkwood's another guy that had pretty good production, but he was at Southern, so you don't necessarily know, is he ready for the Power Four? But he is another name to keep an eye on there. Same with Jaden Porter, a younger guy that it could take a step in his production. We'll see if he gets into the rotation as well. But you've seen some guys in the pass catchers that have taken steps that we were waiting for them to take. Ashton Hawkins to be able to take that step from the group of 5 to the Big 12. Michael Trigg is another one. Now you'd like to still see him take another step, but we finally got to see what we all wanted to see from him at Ole Miss. A second team all Big 12 selection last year, 395 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think that he is a really fun player to watch athletically, and what he can do for this offense gives you so many opportunities in the passing attack. It gives your team some matchup advantages. He's 6'4", 246 pounds. You put him with Josh Cameron, that's a physical group that can make big plays. So that opens things up for other guys that maybe are a little bit smaller. Ashton Hawkins is one of those guys. He's not going to be physical by any means, but he is someone who benefits with his speed, with his quickness. And when you have physical guys, sometimes you get caught up in that, and a fast guy goes right past you. Now, behind Michael Trigg is probably where you have some concerns. You don't have a ton of production behind him, but having Michael Trigg back was, again, another player that I think is just good to have back. And it was really fun to see him last year thrive in a role that we expected him to thrive in and meeting those expectations. Now he's back and he's joining a group that's extremely experienced and has plenty of options. It's just going to come down to who gets the touches, who gets the targets. And with Sawyer Robertson firmly as QB1, you feel like they're in a pretty good place to figure those things out. Up front is going to be a pretty fun group to watch. There's relatively good experience coming back, and the biggest questions are going to be at the tackle positions. Sidney Fugar comes back, had 8 starts last year, comes in at, and this is where you feel pretty good about the physicality, 6'5", 341 pounds. Caden Shiraki is 6'9", 317 pounds. 13 games played last year, 3 starts. So now they get opportunities to step up into this offense and play bigger roles for this team. You feel pretty good about what they're capable of doing at the tackle positions, keeping Sawyer Robertson healthy, keeping him upright, limiting how many hits he takes. That's going to be huge if this offensive line truly wants to help this offense and this passing attack be one of the best in college football. The interior, though, is where the experience comes back. Rylan Lengyel is coming back, 6'5", 310 pounds, started 13 games for this team last year. Colton Price started 13 games at center. And when you look at Omar Agbedigan, you're looking at, I think, a guy who could take a step as an honorable mention all Big 12 selection last year. You feel pretty good about the guard positions. The center position is as experienced as you can get. And I think that that's really good, especially with a promising quarterback with so much potential. The passing attack is only going to go as far as the offensive line allows Sawyer Robertson to make plays, how long he's going to have to throw the ball downfield, and limit how much pressure gets to the quarterback. It's also going to help a rushing attack that finished 42nd last year. And I think that exceeded a lot of people's expectations. I don't think a lot of people saw the Bryson Washington, Dawson Pendergrass show taking off as much as it did, but you have to give credit to the offensive line and what they were able to do. They were able to create a ton of opportunities for their teammates. They were able to create running lanes for their running backs. They were giving Sawyer Robertson plenty of time. And it all kind of came together against LSU in that bowl game. You saw a group that was playing with a ton of confidence. You saw a quarterback that wasn't afraid to make plays. And the results kind of spoke for themselves. But the offensive line deserves a lot of credit for that as well. You don't really get to make those plays if your offensive line isn't up to speed. And this group deserves a lot of credit for what they were able to do. Now, the talent behind them, the experience behind them is lacking a little bit. I think you have some returning guys that you're excited about, but you don't necessarily know what they're capable of doing. You bring in Joe Crocker from Louisville. He's a tackle that could step in when needed. Colton Thomason is going to be another guy that has experience, but you don't necessarily have someone who started a game before. And then the 3 guys in the middle don't have any experience. So that's another thing to keep an eye on in terms of what are we going to have to do if someone goes down. What does our depth look like? And there could be other guys that aren't listed that step up, but that's maybe where you have concerns about this offensive line is the depth. You don't have a ton of experience depth. You maybe have some groups that are in better positions. The offensive line is in a great position with their starting 5, but maybe the back 5 after that is where you have more questions in terms of who's going to be that guy. And if they are that guy, can they handle the pressure? Because we'll talk about the schedule later, but this is a schedule that provides them an opportunity to make a college football playoff run. And it's not going to be easy. And especially right off the bat, it's going to be tough. It is going to be a difficult schedule to navigate, but if you have the right guys in place and they stay healthy, you're kind of in a good spot to make that happen. Now you flip to the defense, and this is where Dave Aranda really has his hands on in terms of a group that he'll affect, and this defense needs to get better. This is a group that finished 81st in scoring defense. That's not going to get the job done. Even if you have a good offense, scoring is going to be great, obviously, but you need to make some stops where your offense doesn't have to do as much work. You're going to want to create turnovers. You're going to want to get stops and get the ball back to an offense that can score, because you want them to be able to score and extend the lead rather than get the lead back. it's just going to get really exhausting for that offense, and eventually they're going to get tired out. Fortunately for this group, this is a defensive line that has a ton of potential to be one of the better groups in the Big 12. Jackie Marshall had a strong season last year, 42 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. They're really excited about his potential this year. They think that he can take another step and be an absolute force. Devontae Tizino is another guy that they're excited about as well. 6'5", 294 pounds. He is a very explosive player, can be extremely disruptive, and we'll see where they line him up. But he is someone that I think has a ton of excitement in his game, and I think we're just scratching the surface of what he can do. Cooper Lands, it could be another starter, and this is where things maybe are a little bit uncertain, but Cooper Lands right now is the most experienced option for opposite of Jackie Marshall. We'll see if they rotate guys around, but this is a good group that has good size and can be disruptive. You bring in some talent from the transfer portal, but otherwise you have relatively unproven and inexperienced guys. Ronnie Mageo is going to be another option, but he only had 2 tackles last year. A guy like Brendan Batt could be another player that steps up, but again, the lack of experience is where things kind of come into play. That's where you kind of have to figure out, just like the offensive line, who are your depth pieces, who can step up, and then when they're put in those roles, can they produce when you need them to? Those are going to be the big questions for this group, and especially up front, that's where everything's kind of dictated. Now, the linebacker position can help them a little bit, but you don't want to rely on your linebackers to make too many plays, because then you're going to get into kind of the position you were in last year. Now, Keaton Thomas is very capable of making plays. You saw that last year, 114 tackles, 7 tackles for loss. He was a first team all Big 12 selection, but he was also making some cleanup plays that probably shouldn't have happened. They need him to make less of those plays, because that means the defensive line is getting penetration, being disruptive, and you'd like to see his tackles for loss improve. Not really anything that's on him. It's going to be on the group in front of him. You bring in Travion Barnes from FIU, another guy that's used to cleaning up plays, but hopefully doesn't have to do as much with his new team. 129 tackles last year, 11 tackles for loss. I'm really interested to see how he fits in this defense. I think that he has great athleticism. He obviously is a good tackler and knows how to make plays, but what does that look like with this team? I think that's the biggest question I have, but I'm excited to see how he fits. I think he's a really good addition for this team. And nice, another addition from Oregon, Amarian Winston, 8 tackles last year, finally gets an opportunity to play a bigger role. Kind of was stuck in a pretty talented linebacker group at Oregon. He is someone that you'll want to keep an eye on. Matthew Fobbs-White coming in from Tulane, another guy, 21 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. He will definitely be in this rotation. He'll be a contributor this year. The other guys to keep an eye on are relatively inexperienced. Corey Kelly's one of them, Kylan Reed, Jeremy Evans. You have guys that are coming back, and it's good for the culture, good for the experience, but they're looking to take steps in terms of their production, in terms of their experience, and showing that they can be contributors as well. So we'll see what the depth chart looks like. Again, the common theme right now with Baylor's team is that you have a lot of positions that are good in terms of starters. You just have questions maybe about who are going to be those depth pieces that step up, who are going to be those guys that aren't necessarily proven, but are ready to prove their worth. Those are going to be the big questions. Now, the secondary doesn't really fall into that category. This is a really experienced group, and it's a group that will be really fun to watch in 2025. Now, that being said, the cornerback position is up for grabs right now. LeVar Thornton and Tevin Williams figure to be the starters right now. The guys behind them, a guy like Calvin Simpson Hunt comes in from Ohio State. Caden Jenkins had plenty of experience, so don't really count them out yet. I don't know if this is anything solidified. Reggie Bush II, and it's known it's not that Reggie Bush, but having his name is going to be a nice talking point for a lot of people. That's a position that's relatively still wide open. The safety position, kind of the same, but you bring in a talent like Devin Turner from Northwestern. He is someone that's going to battle with Tyler Turner for a starting spot. Tyler Turner comes in from Oregon, but I think that Devin Turner's experience gives him the nod there. Devin Bobby had 80 tackles last year, 3 interceptions. He'll be the starter for sure. Carl Williams could play safety, or you could see him potentially at the star position. So we'll see what he ends up doing there, but that gives you some nice depth at multiple positions. DJ Coleman is probably going to be the star right now. We'll see if he is going to thrive in that role, or, you do need to rotate in a Carl Williams, maybe even a Phoenix Jackson, a former linebacker who can play a different role for Baylor than he did at Fresno State. We'll see. He's a natural playmaker, 48 tackles last year, had 7 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 4 passes defended, and 2 interceptions. He is someone that could, like I said, rotate around, and we'll see if he fits into this defense, maybe in a different role where they want to bring in kind of a defensive back that's more of a linebacker. Phoenix Jackson could be that guy, and maybe they utilize him as a linebacker as well. Kendrick Simpkins is another potential player to rotate in at star. So that's a group that, again, you feel pretty good about. You feel like they're in a good place, and that makes for really exciting football in 2025. And again, this is a team that is looking to make a run, and they're not just looking to make a run at a bowl game. They are looking to make a run at a Big 12 title. They are looking to make a run at a college football playoff appearance. And from there, who knows what happens. This is a group that has plenty of potential, and they can make some serious noise, especially with this schedule. Now, it is off to a rough start, and the over-under is 7.5 as of right now. That is going to be a big-time challenge. You start the year off with a home game against Auburn. That's an Auburn team that is looking to be much better under Hugh Freeze. They are looking to improve. Walker White's former team. Then you go to SMU, a team that just competed in the college football playoff. It is a team that is extremely talented. Rhett Lashley has done a great job of bringing in talent and developing that talent that he brings in, but also recruits. So that's a tough game. Then you play Stanford. That should be an easy win for them. And then you play Arizona State, the team that just won the Big 12 last year and made the college football playoff and gave Texas a run for their money. 3 of those 4 games, absolutely difficult. I don't know how this group is going to navigate that, but if this team is legit, those could all be wins. You could sit at 4-0 and you're going to be a top 10 team. You're maybe even going to be a top 5 team if you find a way to win, because you're probably going to have 2 ranked wins depending on where Auburn sits. Then I don't think they're going to be ranked, but weirder things have happened, and the SEC just gets kind of some of those nods for some reason, but they shouldn't be ranked. But SMU and Arizona State should be ranked by the time Baylor plays them. That's 2 ranked wins right off the bat if you find ways to win those games. Oklahoma State, who knows what they're going to be. Kansas State is another tough one. That's a team that's looking to compete for a Big 12 championship. Then you get another bye week. You go to TCU, another team that is looking to be at the top of the conference. And then you get a few teams that are at the bottom with Cincinnati, UCF. After you play Utah, you get Arizona, and then a Houston team that should be better, but Baylor should be the better team. So right now, 22% of you say they'll finish 1st through 4th in the Big 12. That is very much possible. I think that's where a lot of people really are, but I'm surprised that number honestly isn't higher. 53% say 5th through 8th. And really, where this is going to be determined is those first 4 games. You have 1 win for sure, but if you're sitting at 4-0, you're very much towards the 1st through 4th range. If you struggle against 1 or 2 of those teams, then you're looking maybe at 5th through 8th. And the surprising thing is that 22% of you said 9th through 12th. I don't necessarily know if I believe with that, because that to me tells me they're more of that 6 and 6 team. But if you struggle and you're 2-2, or maybe worse, 1-3, then that's where the hype kind of dies. That's where the excitement kind of dies. But that doesn't seem super likely to me. 3% of you think they're going to finish at the bottom of the conference. So you're not as optimistic as the rest of everybody. So that's probably not going to happen. If you ask me, that's like a disaster season. And honestly, that probably is what sends Dave Aranda packing. To me, the ceiling is 11-1. I think that's a very optimistic view. I don't see this team going 12-0, but weirder things have happened. I just think that Auburn, SMU, Arizona State, Kansas State, a road trip to TCU, and Utah are all tough games. And even if things are going right, I don't think this team is equipped to go 12-0, but I could be wrong. 7-5, though, is the floor to me. I don't think that this is going to be a team that falls off. There's too much talent. The only way that that happens really is if injuries start hammering into the depth. If you lose Sawyer Robertson, or you lose some of those offensive linemen like we talked about, Those are things that could affect this team, but I don't foresee that happening. I think that this is a very talented team, a very good team, and a team that is, like I said, going to try to make a run at the college football playoff. If everything goes to plan, this is not a team you want to face in 2025. When they're playing at a high level, we saw what they could do against LSU. We saw what they could do against a really good team. And if they're able to put it all together, we're looking at a team that's going to make serious noise this year.